Why do women initiate more divorces than men? And we're going to refer to some research on this video because in the past I've talked about this and I've given my opinion. It turns out that my opinion does match the research. So I am going to be playing some clips from a Chris Williamson podcast where he interviews Alex Date-Psych, a neuroscience and behavioral science researcher whose work focuses on attractiveness and dating. Okay, so there is a lot of talk around some men who are like, oh my God, I cannot get married because these women, there's an 80% chance she's just gonna flip out and walk out on me and take all my money. And that's kind of a thing that's going around in the MGTOW and incel community and the people who are against marriage. But that's just a narrative that actually rarely happens. When you look at the data and you look at why people are getting divorced and why women are filing, the story is completely different. And for those who don't want to watch the whole video, it really comes down to that women are less tolerant of bad relationships than men are. They're less willing to stay in a bad relationship. So just because the woman filed for the divorce, that doesn't mean that it was her fault. She is responding or reacting to a very bad relationship that often is caused by the man, because men are more likely to be abusive, although women can be also abusive, but men are more likely to have drug addictions and infidelity, and those are big reasons for divorce. Also, I know that a lot of women leave men because of domestic violence. So it's not true that you have an 80% chance of getting divorced if you're a man. It kind of depends on what kind of husband you are. All right, so let's play the first clip.
Why do women initiate more divorces, and what are the reasons that they give for that?
Sure. So, yeah, there's a lot of focus on that. That's kind of the narrative, isn't it? That women initiate more divorces, and that kind of puts the onus on women like, oh, if you initiate the divorce, it's your fault. But there's a lot of different reasons. Actually, the reasons why women initiate divorce is a very complex topic. So I'll kind of go through some of these. But because someone initiates a divorce does not mean that they are at fault for the divorce, right? So we do see, for example, men and women both, men also will admit this, when they get divorced, I cheated at a rate about twice that of women. They're much more likely to be physically abusive, although some recent research has called that into question as well, that perhaps domestic violence within relationships is actually pretty similar for men and women. Men are more likely simply to stay in relationships when the relationship is bad. And if they do kind of want out, they're just simply less likely to ask for the divorce. We know over time, over long periods of time, relationship satisfaction for women, it declines faster as well. So there's a lot of reasons why women initiate divorces, but that doesn't necessarily mean that women destroyed the relationship, right? A lot of the time, those initiations of divorce can...
Okay, another myth is that a woman just blindsides a man by he's totally happy in the relationship and she blindsides him and she comes out of nowhere and she wants a divorce and she takes all of his money. That is a huge myth. The fact is that when you ask divorced couples, if you ask the man and the woman why they got divorced, the man will also say, we just grew apart. And if you ask both of the people, did you both want the divorce? He's also saying yes. They're both saying yes. And if you look at people's financial status after divorce, the woman is more likely to be in poverty and struggle financially as a divorced woman, especially with children, whereas the man is more likely to be better off financially. So let's watch this next clip.
Also, a lot of narrative, for example, that women get a lot out of divorce. That doesn't seem to be the case when looking at alimony, child support, and all of these things. It's usually the case that women enter a state of poverty and stay below the poverty line for a few years following divorce, and that men tend to remain more financially successful following their divorces as well. And there's very high agreement in divorced couples as well on why the divorce happened. Both couples tend to indicate that, we grew apart is simply one of the large reasons. Most divorces as well, if they look at like who initiated it, they often ask whose idea was this or who brought it up first. But if you ask like, did you both want the divorce? You see really high agreement there that both of them are like, yeah, the relationship was over. So that's also something to consider. It seems to be rarely the case that it's simply a unilateral thing. You know, the relationship at that point has deteriorated. Both people know it. She might ask for it first, and that might emerge in the statistics as the woman, you know, initiating the divorce. But it's really rarely the case that the man is just like chilling and he thinks everything is perfect and everything's going well. And then she says, I want a divorce. And he's just blindsided. I don't know why that happened. And then she takes everything. That's very, very rare that that happens.
Now I have one more clip, and this has to do, Chris Williamson is talking about his conversation with Adam Lane Smith. And I am a fan of Adam Lane Smith. He's a former marriage counselor, therapist, who now does more coaching work. He's written a few books. I've talked about him before in my videos, and he specializes in attachment styles. So in this next clip, Chris is talking about the fact that Adam had said that when he speaks to couples in the therapist's office, what usually happens is that the woman is already like over the relationship. She's been trying to tell her husband for years how unhappy she is, and he just hasn't been listening. Sometimes he kind of seems surprised, and that, you know, and then Chris kind of summarizes that this could be a result of the woman maybe not communicating well or the man not listening well. And I will say that was the case in my divorce as well, that for years I was unhappy. Especially the last 3 years of my 25-year marriage, I did often tell him things that bothered me, and I was crying a lot. And but he was like, everything is fine, you know, I like things the way they are. And so ultimately, you know, that is why we got divorced. But it's not a sob story because, you know, sometimes relationships end. So let's play that clip, and then I'll be back on the other side.
Like, you know, guys can get into a habit that keeps them blind to what's going on in their relationship, and the female partner gets to the stage where they say, there are no more hints that I can drop. We need to go to counseling. And then they sit down in counseling, and this woman kind of unloads all of this stuff, and the guy looks across and can't believe what is coming out of his partner's mouth. And yeah, I think it's Adam seemed to think that a lot of the time couples counseling is done by a couple as almost an excuse by the woman so that she doesn't feel too guilty. Like, she's already made her mind up and it's already so far gone, but she needs to finally be able to actually get all of this stuff off her chest. So, you know, you could maybe say that this is a communication problem. Maybe it's a failure of cross-sex mind reading between the sexes, that women are communicating their discontent and their issues in ways that men aren't picking up on, that men aren't being sufficiently perceptive.
And another thing they brought up in the video was the idea that humans are not necessarily designed for monogamy forever, like the prairie vole, that we are more designed to be serial monogamists. So I invite you to watch the whole video. I'm going to put the link in the description below. And the part that I'm referring to starts at around the 58-minute mark, and it goes for about 5 or 6 minutes. But I encourage you to watch the whole video. It's like super interesting. There's a lot of stuff in there about incels and about the libido gap between men and women. Like, it was a really good video. So again, thank you for watching my video.